All right, everyone. Welcome to the first official episode of the Puddle of Grunge Podcast. We still haven't decided on a name. Puddle of Grunge Podcast could stay, could change. We don't know. But here we're going to be basically going over everything that we talk about on the page. Talking about grunge, talking about alternative 90s rock. So yeah, I'm your host, Ryan.
I'm Colby.
And I think we should just get right into it. All right, so as this is the first episode of the official Puddle of Grunge podcast, we're going to talk about the big four, obviously, the main four bands from Seattle at the time, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, and Pearl Jam. So, yeah, the first band we're going to get into is Nirvana. Kind of the quintessential grunge band, if you will. Everyone knows who Nirvana is, especially the impact that they had on music. So what are your general thoughts, and what do you like about Nirvana? I mean, if you look at, what's your favorite album, would you say? Probably, I know you talk about Nevermind a lot and the performances on that. What are, some of the standout tracks? For me, probably, definitely In Bloom is probably one of my favorite Nirvana songs overall, just because of how loud it comes in. It's kind of, a lot of the songs on Nevermind kind of start off clean, and then come into that distortion, but within Bloom it's just straight to you right there, and I love that.
With the Flams.
Mm-hmm. The Flams by Dave, which a lot of people, when they're talking about Nirvana, a lot of people talk about Dave Grohl a lot, but also Chad Channing for Bleach, and then he did a lot of the drumming on Nevermind. It's just Dave re-recording it. So Chad Channing's drumming on Bleach is phenomenal. I thought a lot of his parts on there and his fills were really interesting. A lot of more metal. I feel like it was definitely, Bleach is definitely way heavier, more raw than some of Nevermind. There's some parts of Nevermind that are really raw, but
a lot of punk influence on.
Yeah, Bleach is very punk influenced, which I love. I think it's still overall a great album. Some great riffs on there. I love Mr. Mustache on there, Floyd the Barber, School, Blue, all the great. Negative Creep. I mean, there's so many good standout tracks off there that people forget about just because of the greatness of Nevermind, because that's a 10 out of 10 album. It's kind of hard. I mean, a lot of people could argue it, but I think it's hard to make a point against Nevermind being a 10 out of 10 album with how big it was and the impact that it made and just what overall it did for music in general. It was just kind of a break out of the 80s hair metal era, and it just kind of launched everything. So I'd say Nirvana, especially with Kurt, he's just a true visionary. One of the greatest lyricists probably to ever put pen to paper. What do you think?
I mean, I agree. Just like some of the imagery, especially on the later albums with Heart-Shaped Box, all the lyrics on Heart-Shaped Box is unbelievable.
And I mean, very vivid. And then his riff writing as well. I like how as their albums go on, it gets more complex, more clean riffs, more singular picked riffs, more arpeggiating through notes and stuff. I like how there's a lot of sliding and everything, and it's not just using distortion, it's not just using power chords and distortion. It's a higher level of thinking to it, and I think In Utero really it expands that horizon that Nirvana was reaching, and I think it's a great follow-up to, Incesticide, but a lot of people look over Incesticide as more of a compilation album instead of a full studio album. So In Utero is definitely a phenomenal follow-up to Nevermind, which a lot of people consider their magnum opus. So
For sure. I think, as you were we always talk about all apologies, just going back to that's a relatively difficult riff.
it is really difficult. I've tried to learn it a couple times. I could probably learn it now, but back when I was trying to learn it, it's very hard to play. There's a lot of sliding and a lot of alternate picking that you have to do. And yeah, Kurt's riff writing is just very creative. I think he approaches it from a very different standpoint than a lot of people would or currently do. It's just super interesting to hear.
Yeah, and how he wrote like all those really like amazing melodies off of just power chords.
He was a great melody writer. That was definitely his strong suit. Yeah, like especially when you look at something like the Smells Like Teen Spirit solo, just the melody, it's just a vocal melody, but it's so effective. And I think he was so effective at using a melody and creating just something that'll stay in your head, because that it just stays in your head for so long. It's just perfect.
Yeah, Kurt was like the imperfect, perfect guitar player.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
Yeah. A lot of people would say that like his technique and stuff is flawed, and his approach to guitar in general is flawed, but I mean it's a perfect combination of his influences and his own ideas put onto the neck of the guitar, and it just great sounds that come out personally for me. So
I think so. And while we're on the subject of Kurt, we gotta give some credit to his counterpart,
Christ. I mean, Chris and Kurt were together from the very beginning of Nirvana. I mean, he was such a vital part to the band. I mean, they were really a dynamic duo, kind of the earliest dynamic duo that you think of, aside from like Jerry and Lane, and Jerry and Lane are like a dynamic duo that I think of because of the harmonies. But
Stone and Mike,
yeah. Dean and Rob, but it's just Chris and Kurt were kind of an original dynamic duo, and they were best friends for a long time before that. They were good friends before that, so that chemistry just kind of makes its way into the music. I think it's just, you can hear it, definitely. They kind of play off each other so well.
Yeah, Chris always was writing just really great moving bass lines underneath all of what, like, I couldn't even imagine having to write some bass lines under what Kurt does, because some of his stuff is so like rapid and changing, like especially Negative Creep, like he's just sliding up and down.
Yeah, and yeah, it's definitely the challenge that Chris was faced with in coming up with a lot of the bass lines, especially for something like School or Blue. Those are really like kind of intense riffs, and coming up with a bass line for those is impressive, to say the least. I mean, and they're creative too. They move around a lot, and they're very rhythmic. Very rhythmic.
Blue is just an amazing track. I always keep going back to that.
Yeah. So Nirvana, obviously Dave Grohl joins the band after Bleach. His impact on the band is just, I mean, it's not measurable. He has become one of the biggest rock and roll icons of all time, not just from Nirvana obviously, but from Foo Fighters. And I think that his role in the band, it just can't be understated. I think he brought that energy to Kurt's energetic riffs, with his drum playing, and just, he's such an open drummer as well. That's something that I know you love to talk about, is open drummers. A lot of the drummers from the 90s are open drummers, which is just, the loose playing is so cool to watch. But yeah, Dave definitely brings such an impact with his flams, just his fills, the way that he hits the snare and how hard he hits the drums. Just, they definitely change the vibe of the music for sure.
Yeah, really amps up the energy.
Yeah. And I mean, you could definitely, it's Dave Grohl drumming. It's Dave Grohl drumming when you hear it. I mean, it's kind of,
it's just in the way he hits.
Yeah.
His rhythm's always kind of unique, especially on some of the stuff he does.
Because he's very funk influenced.
No, I remember seeing a clip of him talking with Pharrell Williams.
Yeah.
He was talking about how he got a lot of his stuff from the Gap Band and
Yeah.
all those 80s.
Yeah.
Like, artists. It's kind of cool to see because, like, you completely...
Yeah, because you can literally hear it. Yeah, you can hear it and then see it when he's playing as well, just where he gets those influences. It's just really cool that I think he included those and kind of made up his own way of drumming for himself, you know, because a lot of people think that his style of drumming is kind of weird, because he holds his sticks a little weird, I know, but yeah, I think Dave's just so important to the band. He's been so important to music in general and keeping it alive, basically. So yeah, Nirvana is definitely, I think they definitely started the grunge era in Seattle. You can make the argument for Alice in Chains. We might make it later. But yeah, Nirvana definitely probably the most, if not one of the most important bands of the generation, if not all time.
Absolutely.
So we talked about Nirvana. Next band from Seattle, the earlier band from Seattle, aside from, you know, Green River and Mudhoney, Soundgarden. Coming in at, you know, early 80s, mid 80s, they dropped their first EP, Screaming Life, which is a very interesting EP. It's very different from their you know, stuff after that, but there's a lot to take from it, you know. It's kind of their introduction into the Seattle music scene with Chris's voice and everything, kind of going in there and changing rock and roll, basically, you know. Yeah.
I don't think rock was ever the same once Chris Cornell touched a microphone.
Yeah, I can agree with that statement. I agree with that statement. He was a godsend of a musical genius, really. Just a lot of the things I like about Soundgarden so much is just how much they're willing to experiment and how good it sounds when they experiment. They know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Like some bands, when they experiment, it doesn't sound great.
Maybe forced.
Forced, yeah. Too forced, not, you know, just not their style. But Soundgarden kind of makes the experimentation their own style, if you know what I mean, if that makes sense. You know, what do you like most about Soundgarden? What's the driving forces for you?
Really? Well, I like every single member that's ever been in that band, really. I thought they all brought something completely special to the band. Like, just like all the different albums just had different sounds. They were mixed differently.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there were different producers and stuff.
Yeah.
But like when Hero was in the band, his bass was very far forward in the mix. And kind of when Ben Shepherd came in, Bad Motorfinger era, it was like not as in the front as it used to be. But there are some tracks.
But it's not. Sorry, it's not as in the front, but you can still feel it driving. You know what I mean? It still drives the
closers. Like you can clearly hear Ben Shepherd when he's playing it.
And I mean, when you see live performances and them stuff, you can hear the bass rattling. And again, the rhythm section of Soundgarden is probably in the top 3 maybe, because Ben Shepherd and Matt Cameron, as you said, are just a dangerous pairing.
I agree with that. Matt Cameron is like, you know, being a part of, you know, of course we're going to talk about his other band later, but like just the 3 bands that he was a part of just completely changed the landscape of music.
Yeah, I mean, Soundgarden, Matt Cameron, Temple of the Dog is, you know, his first. He was in Soundgarden obviously, but then goes to Temple of the Dog, recorded that album in honor of Andrew Wood. And then Soundgarden back again, coming in with Bad Motorfinger 1991, Super Unknown 94, Down on the Upside 96, and then, you know, he joins Pearl Jam for Yield 98, or Jack Irons is on Yield. But then he joins Pearl Jam, and I mean, he's been in there ever since, and he's still bringing it to this day. I mean, the longevity that Matt Cameron has had, and just the creativeness that he's been able to display is amazing, really.
Yes, I completely agree. He's just such a unique drummer. I think he can probably, like we've this is our 3rd time going through this podcast now.
Yeah.
But we've talked, like Matt Chris Cornell was a drummer originally.
Yeah.
And could play in like different time signatures, and I'm pretty sure Matt Cameron can as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely.
I watched his interview with Rick Beato, and he said it was kind of natural a little bit.
Shout out Rick Beato. Yeah. But yeah, I also want to talk about Kim because I think his style over their discography really not so much changes, but the way that he influences the band and the way that he is mixed into the band, it changes over time, because in those first couple EPs he's really far forward in the mix. He has a lot of soloing, really bluesy solos, and then as you go on later in their discography, it's more he's back in the mix. It's kind of low-key. His solos, I mean, they're still driving and they're still powerful, like the Black Hole Sun solo, but they're back in the mix. They're not as...
It's like some of them you don't even know they're solos.
Exactly.
Like Black Hole Sun, it just kind of sounds like he's just kind of creating an atmosphere. In the song, but he's soloing.
Mm-hmm. And that's something that I also love so much about Soundgarden. That kind of, it reminds me of like Pink Floyd almost, with the creating an atmosphere aspect to it. I think that's so important in music, is to create that atmosphere that someone can really feel like they've involved themselves in the music and they're there in that moment. I think that's super important when we're talking about experimentation and creating a new sound. I think Soundgarden really brings that to the table with the sounds that they were able to create. So what would your favorite Soundgarden track be?
Man, there are so many, but I always go back to Burn in My Hand from Down on the Upside, and then The Day I Tried to Live from Super Unknown. There's so many great tracks off of Super Unknown.
Super Unknown is, it's definitely, if you ask a lot of people, that's probably in their top 3 grunge albums, because it's just full of hits constantly. It's, I mean, Day I Tried to Live, Fell on Black Days, Fresh Tendrils, Black Hole Sun, obviously. It's just, there's so many, Limo Wreck, 4th of July. The list could just go on. There's so many phenomenal tracks on that album. I think that's definitely probably my favorite Soundgarden album. That probably ranks in the top 5 albums for me, just in general. It's
just super strong.
It's super unknown. It's super unknown. It's a super unknown sound. Once you listen to it, you're like, damn, that really had never been done before. Something that's super kind of also changed music, I guess. And Chris Cornell, going back to him, just a creative powerhouse. Everything that the riffs that he write, his process to riff writing, just so interesting, and a lot to learn from him.
Definitely. Wrote in a lot of, I think it was a lot of the mix of both him and Chris, but they wrote in a lot of different tunings. Mm-hmm. Used drop D a lot with a lot of other songs like Outshined, and I think Slave and Bulldozers.
Spoonman is also in drop D.
Yeah. So they utilize a lot of different tunings and time signatures that we've talked about in the past. But yeah, they're very just inventive and do a lot of different things.
Create their own sound. Okay, so the next band, obviously, that I think we got to talk about, my favorite band personally, Alice in Chains. Just, oh man, I don't even know where to begin. I can't go on too long of a tangent, because we got to keep it under time. But Alice in Chains, man, what do you think?
Yeah, they're pretty awesome. I don't know. There's just so much to say. You can only sum it up sometimes in a few words, or when you have to sum it up. But Jerry's just awesome, just an unbelievable songwriter. Lane, untouchable vocalist. Mike Starr/Inez, both very good bassists. Mm-hmm. Wrote some very iconic lines, and Sean Kinney is just a
monster.
Absolutely
great open-handed drummer.
Open-handed. It's kind of, as you said, it's kind of the case that a lot of these grunge bands had a lot of open-handed drummers, or that play a lot. It's more like I know Sean Kinney is absolutely an open-handed drummer.
Yeah,
But like
yeah.
Matt Cameron can do the hand over hand, but he plays just so much on the ride that he's always almost open-handed.
And then, you know, Dave Abruzzese, we'll talk about a little later. But back to Alice in Chains, you know, their first album, Facelift, kind of comes out in 1990. And it didn't get as much commercial play compared to, like, Nevermind or something, you know, which is why a lot of people don't consider them the start of grunge. I kind of would, because, you know, they were one of the first bands from Seattle, kind of, you know, they got that big airplay. You know, Man in the Box came out.
I think it was on MTV.
It went on MTV. It got a lot of airplay, kind of brought a little bit of spotlight to them. And then, you know, Nevermind came out and it kind of just changed the game. And then after Facelift, which the first 8 songs on Facelift are peak, absolutely god tier songs. You know, ending on that with Sunshine. Just, that chorus, bro. The chorus on Sunshine every time slows down, and I'm like, oh my god, it's so creative. I love it so much. But yeah, starting off with We Die Young as well is such a powerful driving track, dude.
Not just your debut album, just even an album in general. Starting
For real, yes. Oh my god. And then, you know, 1992, you come in, Dirt. First track, Them Bones, just open it up and set the tone for the album. And, you know, a lot of people, myself included, consider Dirt to be Alice in Chains' magnum opus. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that's an agreed upon statement by a lot of people. But what is your opinion on Dirt overall?
On Dirt, well, of course, I would say objectively, it's definitely their best album. I think it's their best selling. I'm pretty sure.
I think it is too.
Yeah, and for good reason. There's just so many strong tracks on it. It's very atmospheric, especially that middle section, like Junkhead and what are Hate to Feel.
Hate to Feel, Junkhead. I mean, if you include Sick Man in there, Angry Chair, Iron Gland, or Untitled, but yeah.
But then, like, they just start and end with complete masterpieces of songs.
Oh my god, dude. Wood.
On Dirt.
First 4.
What's fourth?
Down in a Hole, my favorite song of all time. Down in a Hole, favorite song of all time. You know, I take the studio version sometimes over the unplugged version, depends on the day. I love Jerry's leads on the studio version. They're just so heavy, so atmospheric. I love the bends, so much influence from David Gilmour in there, and yeah, such a phenomenal song. But overall, I would say that as I've listened to Alice in Chains more, and as, you know, I've become more connected to the band, like understanding the dynamics, the self-titled album is definitely my go-to album from them currently, just because it's just a beautiful tragedy, really, of the story of how the band comes to an end, honestly. It's just such a melancholic album. It's so beautiful. The instrumentals on there are just phenomenal from Jerry, and yeah.
It's much more like a guitar orchestra.
Yeah.
And I mean, there is a lot of that on Dirt. Like with Down in a Hole, like it's just like stuff is just cascading over over Lane and Jerry in the chorus. But I think he did a lot of work with layering on that album, and
I've said this before, but I really think the self-titled album is more like Jerry's first solo album, because a lot of the just guitar work and a lot of the producing and post editing after is a lot of his ideas, because Lane was so absent in that time period, sadly. Yeah.
But there is a ton of great songwriting on that. A lot of big choruses too.
Huge choruses, man.
Beside You.
Goddamn.
Yes.
Man.
Huge chorus, and songs like Frogs, which are just masterclasses in all instruments.
Yeah, all instruments, and then
For the song.
a song or like a song like Shame in You, underrated deep cut off of the self-titled album. Just man, the atmosphere created in that song, just the emotion drawn in that song is crazy. You know, the emotion that Alice in Chains is able to give the audience that's listening. Some of it is when you first start listening, it's kind of hard to listen to. It's hard to get into, especially that final album. It takes listening to the band a lot and understanding them to listen to that final album and appreciate it as much, I feel like. But once you come around to it, it's definitely it's my favorite album. It's very strong album. And I mean, I think that they have been the most consistent with their albums, especially in the Lane period. I mean, Jar of Flies right before Tripod, obviously, only a 7-song EP along with Sap on there, but 7 songs, and it's just, oh, man, tears your soul out. 7 songs just...
It's a super strong... It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, but Jar of Flies, it debuted at number 1, which was on the Billboard album chart, even though it was an EP, which just shows how monstrous that EP even was, and there's just so many strong tracks.
So many. Starting off with Rotten Apple, man, it's just, that bass line is so haunting. Mike Inez, genius for coming up with that bass line, so haunting. And then Jerry with just the loose, I think it's just a wah, actually. Maybe a little talk box, but just the looseness of the playing, you know, it's so free flowing. That is such an open track. It's basically just a jam track that they were.
Feels very streamer conscious.
Yes. And I think that's what the whole album feels like, honestly. It's just it just flows so well, you know what I mean? They definitely picked the order of putting the songs in, correctly. I wish they would have ended with Don't Follow sometimes. I know you're not a huge Swing on This fan. I like the song. It's a good song. But ending with Don't Follow, that would have definitely been but
there's just so many strong. I gotta say, My Stay Away is definitely my favorite. But what's your favorite off of Jar of Flies?
Off of Jar of Flies? Man, that's really hard because I mean I love all of them, but I'd say probably Don't Follow. Just man, dude, just the acoustic. I love the acoustic aspect of Jar of Flies.
I think you're just a secret harmonica fan.
I love harmonica.
Yeah, that harmonica solo is great. I can't remember what the guy's name is.
I don't know, but it's the harmonica in that, it just adds something so different to the overall feel of the EP. So
it's like an 85% Jerry track.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Jerry's singing most of it, so always appreciate a Jerry track. Love a good Jerry track, But yeah, I think Alice in Chains overall, definitely my favorite band, probably ever of all time. I mean, I got a hoodie on right now for them, but...
And probably not a weak album in their discography.
I honestly would not say that there's a weak album in their discography. That is... And I would argue that to the grave, honestly, that Alice in Chains has possibly the best discography out of any grunge band.
We'll save that for another day. Not sure if I agree with that.
Okay. All right. So, Alice in Chains, we've covered them. Now, the last band for the Big Four, obviously, is Pearl Jam. So, Pearl Jam, obviously, that's the band that got me into the 90s and grunge. I listened to 10 for the first time. I was kind of just awestruck, mind blown at the sounds that I was listening to. Just a phenomenal first album. Honestly, untouchable.
Untouchable as to who? Grunge?
Yeah.
I you know what? I almost could agree with that. As much as I love the debut albums of all the big grunge bands, 10 is just unbelievably strong.
It's so cohesive, starting off with Once, and you got those drums that come in the beginning, and then ending with Release, which is such a powerful track, ending with that and ending with those drums just ties the album together so well, and it tells such a great story through the whole album. I love it. I think the overall sound of the album is great, even if they weren't necessarily happy with it. I read something the other day that they redid Even Flow like 100 times, and Stone still, like, to this day is not happy with it, with how it sounds, but which is crazy because that's like one of their biggest tracks ever, and they like said that it's like messed up.
That's kind of blowing my mind because that's
Yeah, exactly. He said that they did it like, I think Mike said that they did it like 75 to 100 times, ran through it, which is crazy. That's enough to master a song. Like, that's enough to like have a song mastered, basically.
yeah. Well, and then it definitely shows because almost all the tracks on that album.
Perfect. There's no misplaying or I mean, when you look at a track like Black with the writing on there, man, is just so raw and emotional from Eddie, and the way that he delivers his vocal lines, his cadence is just great.
I know you'll be a star in somebody else's sky. What kind? Who writes a lyric?
Oh my God, man, who comes up with that? It's just so great. And that's really what got me into Pearl Jam first, was just the lyrics, looking at the lyrics. Once you learn to understand them and what Eddie's actually saying, it's some powerful stuff, man. Like, I remember hearing Yellow Ledbetter for the first time, and when that solo hits, it's just taken to another world. Seriously. Oh man, Mike's
Life for at least a month or two.
it changes. It does. It really hits home. That solo definitely hits home for sure.
Us here at the Puddle of Grunge, we're a big fan of Mike's blues solo.
Big fan of Mike's blues solos. Alive, bro. Just that solo. That solo changed your life, man. There's a favorite part that Colby has in that solo. It's not even a guitar part; it's a drum part in that solo.
Dave Cruz.
Thank you, Dave Cruisin, for a drum part. If we can find a clip of it, we might put it in. But yeah, it's, man. So the tracks off of 10 are just so strong, so perfect. You can run through that album as many times as you want and not get tired of it.
So, but after 10. We got just a strong album, Verses. So, Ryan, what are some of your favorite tracks off of Verses? What are your thoughts?
Oh, man. Well, I think the opening tracks off of Verses, it's Go. I'm pretty sure it's Go. And then Animal, just, opening tracks are so important to an album, and I think Pearl Jam does that so well, so consistently.
Sorry to talk over here, but especially back in the day of, like, CDs.
Oh, yeah.
It's very important.
Or, yeah, like vinyl, when you didn't know what you're buying.
You can just, like, pick a song.
That's why it's so different. That's why I get records and stuff so I can, put on an album and listen to the thing all the way through, not knowing what songs I'm listening to. I think that's so important for experiencing the music overall. But yeah, Versus, so many standout tracks on there. You got, Elderly Woman Behind the Counter, A Small Town, Dissident. Your favorite track is on there. Your favorite Pearl Jam song, Daughter.
Yeah, yes, Daughter.
I love the riff on Daughter. It's so Open G. Pearl Jam plays with a lot of different tunings too. Given to Fly is in a really weird tuning as well. Yeah. Yeah, they get into some weird stuff there, but back to Verses. Sorry. You got like Rats on there. You got Glorified G.
I think that's an underappreciated track.
What, Glorified G?
I think that's a strong.
Yeah, oh yeah, Glorified G is, yeah. I love the riff on that too. It's
that part.
The tone.
It's dissonant.
It is, and it's.
Oh wait, funny. I used the wrong word.
Dissonant.
Dissonant.
Yes.
Not dissonant. Dissonant.
Dissonant.
Well, and actually,
another song on the album actually, so kind of worked out, but yeah, I think Versus is a very strong follow-up, and it's the first album with Dave Abruzzi behind the kit in the studio, and that just changes the energy because
Dave is just such an unbelievable drummer.
God!
Well, really,
man.
all drummers in Pearl Jam are amazing in their own way. Like Cruisin', Jack Irons, two-time inductee now, and he was in Peppers, but
I think that the band really comes into their own in Versus with their sound and their energy that they were going for with Dave behind the kit, and it's just, man, a lot of people agree with me that the best Pearl Jam eras are the Dave Abruzzi eras, and I love Matt Cameron. I love Jack Irons on Yield,
and the work that Dave Cruisin did.
And the work that Dave Cruisin did on 10 is perfect. And
it's got. We already talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, but
the best.
Yeah.
My favorite Pearl Jam fill.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, there's so much substance to the Pearl Jam drummers, and I feel like it's something that, obviously everyone knows that they've had problems with their drummers and like keeping them in the band, but Dave Abercrombie, man, that's all I gotta say. Just listen to live concerts of him hitting the cymbals and hitting the snare, and it's just
gives Eric Kretz a run for his money.
Gives Eric Kretz a run for his money. Gives Dave Grohl a run for his money. It's Dave Grohl does hit it hard. Yeah, the Songs for the Dead video kind of proves that. But
I know we keep just going on these long roads about Abercrombie, but like Dave can hit hard and he has finesse, but just the way that like Abercrombie just glides.
Yes, perfect way to describe it. It's yes. Oh my God. But after Versus, we got Vitalogy, which I just recently picked it up on vinyl. I hadn't had it. I have like every Pearl Jam album almost, but I don't have Vitalogy, so I just got that one recently. But great album. I love, once again, starting off with Last Exit. It's a Dave drumming in the beginning, and it's like a little jazz drumming kind of thing. It's really, oh man, just perfect.
Yeah, Vitalogy is definitely not my most listened to.
It's not mine either.
Pearl Jam, but it's got my favorite song, Corduroy.
Yeah.
That's kind of like an inside joke, because like Corduroy is really good, but it's definitely not a top 5 Pearl Jam song for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it is really good still.
And you got Better Man on there.
Nothing Man
too. Both of the mans are very good on Vitalogy. But yeah, just also we haven't really talked about Stone and Mike, but that pairing, the funkiness of Stone and the bluesiness of Mike is just absolutely perfect together.
Yeah, their riff writing is I don't know, is it mostly Stone?
Stone writes a lot of the riffs, Mike does a lot of the lead playing. So sorry about the camera angle change. We had a little battery die, but so yeah, when we're talking about Vitalogy, Stone and Mike, that pairing is just perfect. It's the dynamic duo that really a lot of people think about when they think about guitarists from the 90s. That's what I think about. Is just that pairing. And
especially, there's not a lot of dual guitar bands, mostly in the grunge era. There's not.
Yeah.
But when you think of it, and really just music in general, you look at like just like a top 10 list of like guitar duos, Mike and Stone are definitely going to be on there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's very influential in
the way that they play and the way that they approach their riff writing, the way that Mike approaches soloing, a lot of Hendrix influence, a lot of funk influence, especially from Stone. He's so groovy with his rhythms, and
his right hand is always going crazy.
And so complex as well.
A lot of weird. They do a lot of dissonance, like we were talking about with Glorified G. There's a lot of really interesting.
Yeah, or like on the song Dissident, Stone's guitar part it's awesome. Yes, yeah, it's really cool. But, after Vitalogy, you got No Code, which kind of divides a lot of Pearl Jam fans in general, just because it's very avant-garde, as you've said multiple times. It's very experimental compared to the other stuff. You got good tracks on there like Lucan, Red Mosquito, Smile, but it's not a lot of people's favorite albums, depending on who you ask, I guess.
And some people will say it is their magnum opus.
Yeah, some people will say it's their greatest of all time.
Not anybody I know, but
yeah, we've seen comments.
That's just actually for real though. I've never heard anybody say that.
But we won't spend too much time on No Code, and we're trying to keep it short. But after we got Yield and Jack Irons on there, it's oh man, Yield is a great. I think Yield's a great album. I think it honestly might be my top 3 Pearl Jam albums.
So it's taking over Vitalogy.
I honestly, at some points it does. I love Given to Fly off there. I love Wish List, WMA on there as well. It's just they're so yeah. Yield's a really good album.
And then we don't really want to go too far into the later.
Yeah, we're just staying only in the 90s for for them right now. We'll go later at some point, but you know, overall Pearl Jam, I love the impact contribution that they made to the genre, and Eddie's voice, obviously. He was an ultimate stage presence as well, always energizing the crowd and keeping himself energized. So yeah, Pearl Jam is definitely might be my second favorite grunge band still. But yeah, I think that we have gone over most of what we want to go over now, besides going into like album deep dives and stuff. So let us know what you guys want to see. We really want to keep doing this, get some more topics to talk about with you guys, get your feedback on everything. And yeah.
Also, this is very difficult for us to withhold ourselves because really, with most of these bands, we could talk about one album, just keep
yeah, yeah,
performances on the songs, the drummers who worked on it, who produced it, all this stuff. Like pretty much every single.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to see that, just let us know, and we can definitely do like some album deep dives, go into like some other different topics, because we know we like all kinds of music. So
it can be very expressive when it comes, and when we're kind of glossing over it in this first episode, doesn't allow us to really express.
Yeah, our
real deep
thoughts
love
on for it. Yeah. So yeah, I think we've kind of covered everything. I think we've gone through a lot of stuff that most people would talk about. So I think it's been a good first episode, and I think going forward, it'll be awesome to see what the people have to say. We love the support you guys have been giving us on the page. We wanted to bring something to you to further represent that and interact with you more. So yeah, this is Puddle of Grunge Podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Colby.
And we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.